Bellville's vibrant informal traders market takes center stage as we explore its vital role in South Africa's informal economy. Presented by the Greater Tygerberg Partnership, this episode unpacks traders' challenges, from food safety to policy barriers, and innovative solutions like trading prototypes and waste management. I'm your host Dan Claassen, and in this episode my guests are Rirhandzu Marivate, Programs Manager at the South African Urban Food and Farming Trust, and Jacqui Samson, Professional Planner and Owner of J Samson Consultancy. Rirhandzu, Jacqui, welcome. A question to both of you. Why is Bellville's informal food market a vital case study for understanding South Africa's informal economy, and how does it reflect broader urban challenges?
Thank you. Bellville is seen as Cape Town's second largest and I think arguably largest CBD in the region. And that means that it has actually quite a lot of people flowing through, particularly through the transport interchange. And so this has created a burgeoning food system, which is really characterized by quite a lot of informal food trading, so that people are able to access food while they're on the go, going to work, going home. And it really has helped them with really supporting access to food and food security across many different residents and people across Cape Town. And the reason this is important to us as SA Urban Food and Farming Trust is because we're wanting to see how we can support the building of urban community resilience through food systems. And we're involved in this amazing project called AfriFood Links that realizes this, especially in an African context, on how we are able to provide better food environments for those who access it so that they have better food choices, accessible food and food security that is sustainable and building and culturally appropriate. And then the reason of focusing specifically on Bellville is because Bellville, again, is seen as African hub, a Pan-African hub of food that has a diversity of food that really highlights different landscapes across Africa. And that speaks to not only what's available, but then who it's serving. And we wanted to see how we improve the resilience, not only of those who consume the food, but those who actually provide the food, which are the informal food traders.
I just want to maybe highlight the importance of Bellville CBD, which is considered the largest transport interchange and urban hub after the city of Cape Town Metro. So if we look at the function as a transport interchange, we'll see that there is a long haul and local bus, train, and taxi service provided. The number of commuters range from over 50,000 for the train commuters daily and over 40,000 for taxi commuters daily. Those are the calculated commuters, which means that there is an integration of both commuters who use the transport interchange as a modal interchange or that come to Bellville as a destination to work, to come to one of the three universities or to the hospitals or other services, both government and commercial services offered in the Bellville CBD. As a result, it attracts both visitors, shoppers, as well as students or just daily commuters to use the services and to access opportunities created in the Bellville CBD area. So within the formal retail market, the informal traders have developed a system of supply and demand, optimizing the opportunity of the thousands of commuters that interchange through Bellville daily. So the supply and demand system then consists of the formal retail sector supplying the informal sector, and where both local businesses and the informal traders then benefit. There's a mutual relationship between the two parties. And in the same way, the public transport also creates a network of supply and demand. So other than the formal and informal, the transport interchange also then provides the opportunity for morning and afternoon peak, for example, and then the demand for, in this case, specifically for food throughout the day. And then as an urban planner, we look at how this transport service is the dominant land use at the transport interchange, and they are the key role players. But the food market position themselves in such a way that they form a symbiotic relationship between the transport interchange and the informal trading market in the area. There may be conflict that arises between the transport function, the vehicular transport function, pedestrians, and then the traders that position themselves where the feet are and may then conflict with safety and access for both commuters and the vehicles using the transport interchange. But we do see this as a optimal and very common urban environment where different users, although not formally allowed to trade or to use the spaces the way they do, or occupy the spaces where they do, it is seen as a very common practice in larger cities where informal markets have established themselves in such retail and transport hubs.
Rirhandzu, what are the primary challenges informal traders in Bellville face in producing and delivering safe, healthy food, and how are these being addressed?
I think a lot of the food traders are challenged with adequate infrastructure because there's a lot more traders than there is infrastructure. This speaks to access to storage. This is both dry and cold storage, access to electricity, just for lighting in order to keep the area visible and safe, and but then also into supporting some of their day-to-day operations as well. Access to ablutions, this is toilet facilities, as well as access to water in order to maintain a hygienic environment. And I think overall, having structures that are not necessarily as robust as required in order to trade in a meaningful and dignified manner is also one of the key challenges. Overall, given that the area also is bustling with so much activity, there are also issues of safety and security overall, both for the traders and the customers that pass through the area. And so, with that, we're wanting to see how to address some of these challenges in order to leave the informal food traders better off in order for them to be able to continue supporting the healthy and prosperous food environment in the Bellville CBD. As I previously stated, us as SA Urban Food and Farming Trust had the opportunity to come in with AfriFood Links as a Pan-African project that looks at focusing in improving food environments across 5 African cities, and us in South Africa very much focused in Cape Town. And through the AfriFood Links project, we've been able to have funding and the opportunity to develop socio-technical experiments to implement within the Bellville CBD. And from the challenges that I have mentioned, we have identified some activities that we're actually wanting to pilot within the CBD that will hopefully improve the state of the environment for the informal food traders. The one is looking at infrastructural improvements, and this looks at seeing how we can prototype food vending structures that meet the needs of the traders, but then are also compliant with regulations, particularly with regarding food hygiene and safety overall, so that they're able to have that dignified, safe, and adequate space for trading. We're also looking at more of the social capacity development side of things. And so we're also looking at how we improve their understanding of food health and safety compliance by introducing programs that actually enable them to have better understanding and knowledge of how to navigate that system and overall improve their trading. And we are also looking into how to include the support of better waste management And so this is looking at investing in a black soldier fly facility that will address organic waste management so that we reduce, redistribute, and really repurpose organic waste management. One of the key challenges that the city also has regarding that has been just not being able to process, especially cooked food. And then so with that, we're hoping that we're able to then improve the breaking down and processing of both fresh and cooked food waste that overall will then be turned into reusable compost that can then go into opportunities of gardening within the Bellville area.
Jacqui, your recent Bellville Food Market Survey situational analysis highlights that most vendors lack trading permits and feel unsupported by the city. How do these current planning policies, like the informal trading policy, impact these vendors, and what role can the GTP play in assisting with this?
Thank you. So the enablement or the enabling environment for informal traders is twofold. One is designated spaces for informal trading, and secondly, licenses or permits for informal trading. The City of Cape Town has designated areas and provided infrastructure for informal traders. They demarcated spaces and allocated specific infrastructure to support those spaces within the Bellville CBD, specifically around the public transport interchange where most of the vendors are located. Secondly, there is a permitting system where vendors are applying for a license or a permit to trade as an informal vendor or an informal trader, and that has its own process. It is a very cumbersome and administrative process for the vendors. They have voiced that concern and frustration. Also, the regulations are quite strict around how you can utilize your license, and it does then discourage vendors from applying because of their operating model and how they operate and where they choose to operate, knowing their market and how they should just respond to the demand and opportunities created in that market. So I must say the City of Cape Town, they are pro economic development and looking at supporting the informal traders. Although the system is not ideal for those informal traders, there has been progress made and additional informal trading areas earmarked and infrastructure provided now. Currently in the CBD, it's being finalized. So there is extended opportunity. As I indicated earlier, there's always conflict between different land users and uses. And so the city has to make sure that there's compliance in terms of safety. I would say that because we focused on informal food traders, we find many informal traders in the Bellville CBD area, whether they are licensed or unlicensed. But our situational analysis report focused on food vendors. And if one looks at the solution for that, and as I indicated earlier as well, there is a good relationship between the formal and the informal food sector, as well as a good relationship, and no competition was evident between or amongst the different informal traders and food vendors. So we look at specifically how the city can extend the infrastructure provision, because the focus would still be to provide more hygienic food options or healthier and nutritional meal options. So look at the provision of, for example, infrastructure. We spoke about water. So it's not just the provision of water, but how do you dispose of water, or how do you manage the water provision and disposal? Access to sanitation, access to more safer energy provision. How do you then cook your food? Gas systems or open fires? How do you secure that or make it safer for both the service provider, the food vendors, as well as the customers and the commuters that walk through it. I think what's important is the provision of fresh produce. So, what's interesting that came out, or we were informed of the fact that there is a Bellville fresh market close by, a kilometer, less than a kilometer, but the option is still to go and buy fresh produce at Epping, which is some 15 kilometers away. So we have to investigate that. Why is that happening? Because we want better access to fresh produce, healthier food, more affordable access to fresh produce. So looking at that. And then also the operating hours for those fresh produce markets. Is it accessible after normal trading hours, before and after, over weekends? So we're looking at that. But I was thinking while I was preparing for this, why do informal trading areas not have a shopping mall? Why can't we provide a proper food market, a shopping mall, a covered market for vendors to come in and trade instead of it being outside and exposed to weather elements? So, looking at that. And then, speaking of weather elements, part of the solution or the recommendations for improving the food vendor environment is to provide structures that then caters for or enables, promotes healthier food preparation and serving, makes provision for storage, safe lockable structures, makes provision for water and access to infrastructure. And then, of course, this unit must be mobile so that it can be brought out in the morning. It's already ready for trading, as opposed to the current situation where the vendors have to put up their structures. So, just to go back to the initial intention of this question and how the city or any authority can create that enabling environment for food traders is just improve the communication and understand the supply and demand. Just the supply chain, the flow of supply and demand, where even the storage, provision of water, of course, the provision of ingredients and fresh produce and whatever is required to provide the food. That is often through informal trading processes. But above all is the administrative process. And I know later on we'll talk about systems to improve access to finance, access to permitting systems. But currently it's very cumbersome. We have the difficulty even of engaging with the traders during their normal working hours and not wanting to take them away from their serving stations. So they simply do not have time to go and fill out forms and reapply for permits or renew their permits. So there must be some system that is easier. And all of them have cell phones, so they even take orders, WhatsApp orders and delivery through their cell phones. So they have some systems in place, and we can look at how we can tap into that and enhance that to improve the permitting and licensing system between the city and the vendors, with the informal and licensed traders.
Rirhandzu, AfriFood Links is funding a food station prototype to improve trading structures, focusing on storage, safety, and innovations like cashless systems. How can co-design with vendors ensure these prototypes meet their needs?
As Jacqui has highlighted in terms of the process that we undergone, it was important for us through the AfriFood Links project in partnership with the Greater Tygerberg Partnership to commission a situational analysis. And this is, as we've said, was a survey of really understanding the context and the landscape. And that really speaks to us being very careful and intentional in not wanting to have assumptions of what we think and understand the challenges to be. And it was also a process of building relationships with not only the traders within the Bellville CBD, but then also an opportunity to use the surveys and situational analysis to understand what other stakeholders are involved within the Bellville CBD, be it other food actors, the City of Cape Town, and others who have interest. And then understanding then how that helps us with shaping and understanding the context in order to make sure that whatever intervention that comes in is fit for purpose for the trading environment, and particularly for the traders, given that at the end of the day, it's about them making sure that they have the best operations so that they are able to make business. The second is that we also have a market activation opportunity that looks at a pop-up day where we are able to look at a specific area of concern or challenge and look at how we intervene. And this speaks to the broader market management opportunity. This was in line with what GTP has put together as a market management model that helps with improving just the overall management of traders within the area. And so with that, it helps us with creating a scenario of seeing how a typical day in a market could potentially look like for traders within a specific improved element of market management, and then how that can help with building and improving the learning, so that in future, as Jacqui had potentially had proposed, having a proper market that actually helps with supporting food traders specifically could maybe come out. And so through the activation process, it's about really not only building the buy-in, but then also having active understanding of what opportunities there might be in through testing. And so that's one of the key things that we're also wanting to do. So besides having the prototypes, it's also about testing and engaging through a process continuously with the various stakeholders. The last is speaking to the values of AfriFood Links that speak to, continuous learning, inclusivity, collaboration, having novelty in the types of experiments that we bring into Bellville, as well as sustainability, not only through the environmental and economic sense, but, self-sustainability of the projects. And so this means that in the way that we have approached our implementation within Bellville, in improving informal food traders, was to make sure that it's always a co-designed consultative process and it's always iterative. And so throughout the process, we're always engaging with the city officials, other food actors, but most importantly, the food traders themselves, to make sure that the interventions that we're bringing in, that we're testing out, are actually contextually appropriate, in order to avoid white elephants, as the city likes to speak of. We need to make sure that there is the buy-in, there is trust, and as I mentioned, there is that contextual fit for purpose. And that's how we continue to approach how we engage with implementation in Bellville. So for me personally, I think besides the implementation and the infrastructure and the capacity development, what's most important is actually making sure that we bring along people and we develop very much trust relationships. And I think overall, at the end of the day, agency for the community, for the traders to actually have ownership and say around what they would like to see, and also have ownership of how they would like to see things happen within Bellville. And I think that just creates that pride of place overall within Bellville.
Jacqui, how can urban planning integrate innovation such as new trading prototypes, waste management systems, AI and tech utilization together with the Greater Tygerberg Partnership's proposed management model?
I'll start with the role of the Greater Tygerberg Partnership as a development agency who commissioned the initial study, the situational analysis of the food vendors within the Bellville CBD area. So the Greater Tygerberg Partnership are positioned very well to be that liaison between different stakeholders with both the formal and informal economy, commuters, general community, authorities, as well as businesses and possible funders. So the situational analysis revealed that there is a need for a more formal structure within a more secure environment. So the one is the space where they are located so that they're not subjected to law enforcement forcibly removing them because they are operating illegally. But also with that, find a more secure structure that protects them from the weather elements, then creates that enhancement or better opportunity for trading and reduces the time they take to set up and dismantle the structures at the end of the day, but also then enables that healthier food environment because the structure then protects the produce or the cooking elements against the weather and the harsh weather. So when one looks at the opportunities created, you want to reduce the food waste, improve serving, improve storage. There's then that opportunity for then bringing in other than developing a structure. You also have that opportunity then to link the structure to other enhancements such as solar panels for lighting or maybe for energy. The Greater Tygerberg Partnership has a food or a waste management system where they collect organic waste and create compost and then use it for the urban food garden. So there's already a system in place. And through this design, we want to then link the waste management to that existing service that the Greater Tygerberg Partnership has well established. And we're also looking at then some consumer education. Use the opportunity when we introduce the prototype and the system, waste management system with the black soldier fly waste management system introduced as well. We want to see it as an opportunity to educate and inform the vendors as well as commuters and the public transport service providers so that the waste is managed better, that there's an education around that, and that they also take responsibility for waste management. There are systems already in place where there's recycled bins and stations provided. But again, bearing in mind that this is an informal trading space, and one also has to be careful where it's placed, that it doesn't interfere with the safety and the flow of the vehicular traffic. So we also have to look at all of that. So it's a lot about the design and what's important, also placemaking. So co-design with vendors was an important approach for improving the system. And again, GTP is good at bringing different stakeholders together. We're now looking at how we can provide the prototype that includes enhancements for waste management, water management, improved safety. So that's all in the design of the prototype.
Rirhandzu, how can the Greater Tygerberg Partnership's sustainability efforts, like waste management in Bellville, empower traders to adopt greener practices? And what role does collaboration play in these initiatives?
I think, yeah, with the Greater Tygerberg's sustainability goals and really interest in, a greener Belleville, it's really interesting on how we wanted to approach this project specifically. I think, yeah, as aligning with the GTP's goals, AfriFood Links also has an interest in overall sustainability, as I mentioned previously. And speaking more specifically to, firstly, sustainability, just in terms of just overall making sure that there is an alignment with existing activities within Bellville, but then also alignment with the goals of the city of Cape Town, as well as GTP, and then so that the projects actually plug in rather than, reinvent the wheel or completely inappropriate for the space. And so that already plays into what I spoke to about that buy-in, but then also the longer term sustainability, because these projects will already speak to the needs and goals of the broader Bellville. And in terms of sustainability in the environmental sense, I think we realize that waste, regardless of who you are, plays a huge role. There's so much waste generated within Bellville. And then we saw the importance of organic waste management, as I mentioned. The city itself has a mandate of trying to get zero organic waste to landfill in the near future. And we've seen the efforts that GTP has had in collaboration and in support with the City of Cape Town in already introducing different waste management systems within the Bellville CBD. Jacqui has already spoken about, the efforts of recycling that are connected to their buyback center. And with AfriFood Links, we're very much interested in organic waste management, and they have worked with urban waste management on introducing waste collection services for the different food traders within Bellville. And with AfriFood Links, we're wanting to supplement that with the hope of introducing waste depots, where it moves from food vendors having waste collections done for them within the current system, but then them being empowered and encouraged to actually self-manage the waste collection, but by providing adequate and very much easily accessible infrastructure such as waste depots that then will build into having the waste move to the Black Soldier Fly facility. What excites me of where the facility is going to be located is at the GTP's buyback center, where already the recycling is happening, and they also have an organic garden where they're already also doing composting. So the Black Soldier Fly facility would then add to that overall environment by providing an opportunity of the Black Soldier Fly facility would then provide the opportunity to break down and process cooked organic waste that then can be used as compost. And the compost can also then be added to the composting and gardening that happens. And I know that the vegetables are grown for sale, but then also to support the feeding kitchen that exists in that space. And so that adds to, improving circularity of the food system through waste. And I'm also quite interested because the other byproduct of the Black Soldier Fly facility is larvae that can be fed to chickens. So I'm hoping that as we implement this facility, there may be an introduction to chickens, and then we can also have, other alternative forms of food and protein introduced to just continue to build towards that circularity and access to very much locally produced and connected food systems.
Where do both of you see the greatest opportunities for developing support structures, such as infrastructure, policies, or management systems, to strengthen Bellville's informal trader economy?
One is e-systems, I would say, more technology. Firstly, my experience, for us to collect information, we had to do it manually. So there's no information that exists. The Greater Tygerberg Partnership, the City of Cape Town, other players have collected information, but there's no reliable live information. So if we have a system where we can tag and collect information of the number of vendors, the number of commuters, their operations, their sales, how much they make, how long the operating hours, if that is available, we can then look at business support for them. So, for example, e-services, point of sale, there's still a cash system in place. Also, that will improve some safety and security. So, some point of sale technology, and we see it at informal markets all the time. The handheld machines or the cell phones. Social media and training use that also for marketing. So I think that AI, we can bring AI in, and then one enabler would be hotspots or Wi-Fi or internet access. So that's where the authorities can come in. One can also partner with businesses, and I know that currently they do sell SIM cards, and so the main cell phone service providers are already present in that CBD. And if one looks at the informal settlements where they have satellite dishes, why can't we look at access to the internet at such transport hubs or such community hubs? So that's one intervention that we haven't fully explored yet. And that I think would be one way of then also ease of doing business for, and also maybe enhance the business for those commuters and make it safer for customers that they don't have to carry cash.
I think for me, I would look at more of the softer side of things, just continuously figuring out how to build, more solid engagement platforms for the different stakeholders, including the vendors. And I think that can be very complementary to making sure that the other opportunities of having more e-services within the area is fit for purpose. So other than that, I don't have anything additional to share. Thank you.
In closing, what fascinates both of you about the informal economy in Bellville, and how can the Greater Tygerberg Partnership's goal to become a knowledge hub create a scalable model for supporting informal traders across South African cities?
What was fascinating for me while we were doing the situational analysis is that there's a symbiotic relationship between the formal and informal market. They don't see each other as competition, but the informal market created opportunities for the formal service providers. Secondly, amongst the informal traders, there's no visible competition either. They support each other. They actually create a network, almost a one-stop shop. They huddle around each other and they position themselves so that when the customer comes, that they can then have the array of ingredients and goods to purchase, and it's visible, it's displayed well. So there is a sense of a community there that support each other, that enhance each other's business, and that creates that network between formal and informal economy. So that was fascinating for me. And there is order. There is definitely structure and order, although they are trading mainly in spaces that's not designated informal trading spaces. They are organized and try to accommodate the different users in that space.
So what fascinates me about the Bellville informal economy is essentially the city of Cape Town municipality works through a regulatory environment, whereas what we are witnessing and what we have really established through the situation analysis is that it's a very social ecosystem. And so in the way that traders, be it formal and informal, with their various customers and other actors within the space, they have a very well-run machine just in terms of understanding their needs, how they move, and all of that. And then so the informal food economy, and I think just broadly the informal economy really operates at a social landscape more than a regulatory landscape. And I think for me, that provides an interesting insight in what we call so-called licenses to operate, given that the city, has to stick to regulations, which is fair and all of that. And then that's how you actually provide the platform for licenses to operate. But society has given the informal food traders a social license to operate within Bellville, and they wouldn't be there if that understanding and agreement wouldn't be in place. And so I think that for me fascinates me on how Bellville continues to evolve and move to make sure that it meets the needs of society and the community overall. And yeah, thank you.
A special thank you to my guests and the Greater Tygerberg Partnership for this insightful conversation on Future Cities Africa.